Hello everyone, and welcome back to Schleichhorst Studios. I'm finally back from my little hiatus. I have been working as hard as I can for the last few months to make this video. So after a very wet and cold spring gave way to a hot, dry summer, I have had a lot of time to spend indoors working on the barn. Regardless, it's still taken its time, but anyways, let's get into it. So jumping right in, I chose to really focus on the exterior of the barn this part, and we'll be doing a little bit more interior stuff next time. So I'm starting by painting these poles, and I already stained them a darker brown, and then I'm painting them with one coat of white acrylic paint, and it's a messy job and your hands do get completely covered in paint, but it does look nice in the end. So once the poles are dry, I take out my little blade and I use it to kind of remove some of the paint from the corners and also around on the entire pole. I just kind of scratch away at some of the paint, and in the end it looks very rough and kind of old, which is just what I'm going for. The poles at my real barn are chipped just like this and are kind of in need of a fresh coat of paint. Anyways, I take out my fluffy brush and dust some pastels on the wooden parts that are exposed, and I try not to go too heavy-handed with this as I want to keep it kind of minimal and I want my poles to look realistic. So then I plotted out a pencil hole, and I'm taking this sharp piece of florist wire and kind of boring it into the wood. I didn't want to get out a drill for just a couple poles, and I wasn't sure if I would have a bit small enough, so this worked for now. Then I took my wire, I'm not exactly sure what gauge it is, maybe 18 or 17, I'm not sure, but I bent it into a little hook shape, and I will be taking a jump ring and I'm going to thread it onto the wire. Oh my gosh, I lost it. After a lot of searching, I finally found it, and I got it onto the wire, and I put it in the hook and clamped the hook part down, cut it off, and I made a couple more of those, and if you get these sharp points coming off the wire, you can just snip them off. I then took the little metal jump ring on the wire and put some glue in it and stopped it kind of in the hole and waited for it to dry, and it looks great, like a little ring for hay nets. Next, I'm taking some wooden rods and I stain them in this lovely grayish brown color, and I'm plotting on my plywood base where I'm going to put them. And I just glue them down with some hot glue for now, but I will glue them down with a more sturdy glue later. I spent hours making all of these fence boards and staining them, but I'm still not sure if I have enough. But I proceed to put them on my fence in rows of 3, and I just kind of glue them down and hope that they look nice. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is applying some pastel to the fence to make it look old and weathered, and I apply it where there are joints of wood, so on the fence poles and also when two boards meet. I'm also just dusting some on the main boards to look maybe like a place where a horse has like rubbed its neck, or I don't know, mud has sloshed somewhere, maybe even a little stain from some horse poo that fell onto the fence. And then I'm taking out my little fine brush and made some lichen green paint, and I'm just kind of dotting it on the fence in the hopes that it looks like lichen. And then when it's only partially dry, I take a paper towel and kind of remove the wet layer on top to make the lichen look a lot more subtle, so it's not green dots all over my fence. And here is the effect it gave. The next thing I'm going to do is take a craft knife and remove some of the wood from the fence to make these little chips like this. And if you are a younger viewer, get an adult to help you with this step, as the tools are very sharp and close to your hands. And then I went through and dusted it with some light colored pastel so it looks a little aged, not super new. And this just kind of looks like maybe a place where a horse had, I don't know, been chewing the fence or just weathering in general, and it really helped the fences to not look so perfect. So if you watched my last video, and there will be an eye in the corner now with a link to it, and you can click on that if you want to. You may have known that I really struggled with the stall dividers in particular. So I came up with a plan to make them better. So I scored pieces of balsa wood and on just one side, and I just used a butter knife to score the wood, and I showed you how to do it in my previous video if you want to know how. And so I have the two pieces of wood, and I'm going to use these as the stall dividers. So I'm taking my ruler and a pencil and plotting every ½ inch along the wood. Next, I cut these ½ inch boards from the balsa wood and cut them to be quite short, maybe 1.5 inches long. And coming over to help me is a friendly cat assistant, but you'll see how that goes later. Anyways, I glue the boards down to the wood, leaving just a little bit of a gap in between each one. And I did make pencil tick marks for reference on my wood. And when it's done, it looks like this. And now I will take the wire and put it between these boards to give it extra stability. So now it's time to cut the wire. So I take out my big boy pliers, which have wire cutters on the end of them, and I'm cutting my wire to about 2.5 inches long. I then apply a strong glue to the wire and glue it down with about 1/4 to 1/2 inch underneath the wood and most of the wire sticking up at the top. I proceed to do this with the rest of the wire, and I make sure it's all firmly in there and that all the wire is even. I also took one of my models and positioned the model against the wood to make sure that it's the right height for the horses. And hindsight, it was not. It was a little bit short, but I was not going to waste all that wire. So You know, maybe I should have fixed it, but yeah, anyways. So the next thing I did was to put a border at the bottom, just so that it wouldn't be strong at the top and flimsy at the bottom. And then I started to glue in the rest of the wires, which was a tedious process. I had to tape the wood down and glue in the wires to make sure that they were the exact same length at the top and that they weren't wonky. So the next thing I did was put another scored board on top of it all so that it looks nice and finished and that the wire and boards underneath aren't showing. And this creates a really sturdy wooden stall divider, and I really like it. It's heavy and just feels kind of indestructible. Take 2 thin pieces of wood and score them across the middle one time, and they're identical. I glue the bars onto one of them and glue the other one on top, and this makes a nice finished top, which I really like. The next step is staining the wood. Obviously, it can't stay new like this. It has to look a little bit aged and a little stained, but I made up a nice stain that's not red this time, and once stained and put in the stable, I think the stall dividers look really good. I'm really happy with them. Okay, so really bouncing around, I'm now starting work on the gate for the exterior of the barn. So it's a little A-frame gate like this with 3 boards in the middle, and I just loosely assembled it like this. It's not yet glued down, but I think this is how I'm going to build it so far. So I just test to make sure each of the pieces looks good, and then I glue it together with a strong and sturdy wood glue. It takes a lot of time and consumes a lot of energy to straighten it out, and I really found the grid on my craft mat helpful to make sure I got everything straight. The next thing I did was cut these 2 boards so that they fit together in this A shape. And I glued them to the gate as well with the same wood glue. I added a little bit more glue on the side and glued the last bit down, and the gate is structurally complete. Now I just have to wait for it to dry a little, but honestly, I'm so happy with it. I think it turned out exactly like the gate at my barn, and I was really happy about it, and for days, honestly. Next, I take out my pastels and fluffy brush again and give the whole thing a layer of pastel to make it look aged and old. Now I'm going to take more steel and cut it with my big boy pliers. This time it's hinges, and I'm cutting it about 3/4 of the length it already is. And it takes a lot of wiggling and effort, but finally it came off. Then I'm going to cut one of the sides into a kind of point shape, and that will fit nicely on the side of the gate and won't be visible in a minute. So I glue it down to the gate, and I made 2. And then I glued these kind of metal parts. They're like 3 triangles that I cut out of soda can metal, and I glued them over the triangle part of the hinge that is on the gate, if that makes any sense at all. And now I'm painting them black to match the metal hardware on the real version of this. done. I am so happy with it. I think it looks awesome. And the gate swings really well. I'm so happy with that. I think it looks just like the real gate, and I'm really excited to put it into place in the barn. Now, I did kind of chip some of the paint and make the gate a little rusty and old with acrylic paints, and brush a little bit of pastel on the black metal parts as well to kind of soften it. And for the latch, since the real one is very complicated, I just made this simple chain and hook design out of wire, and I painted it to look rusty again. And here it is complete. I'm honestly over the moon about it. Alright, so while we're on the topic of gates, I thought I would show you guys how I made the big red gates that this barn also has 5 of. I make this very simple skeleton framework, and I put some epoxy in the corners. It's just for short poles to outside short poles and 2 long poles at the top and bottom. And now I'm putting long poles in the middle, with leaving the gaps between them at the top wider and at the bottom much narrower so that the horses don't get their feet caught. At first I made it like this and then thought I had done it wrong, but I actually looked at the gates outside and saw that they were like this, and I was really happy. So I glued them down, and with a time skip, the gate is painted red, and I added some pastel dust to it as well. And I also added these metal hinges on the side. They're just circular rolled up bits of soda can metal, and I'll show you how they work in a minute. Alright, so for the hinges, I made a little base with a bent piece of hinge, a screw, and put it on a pole, just super glued it there. And I want to credit Daisy Stalls for this. Her channel is amazing. She's a wonderful model horse artist who makes such cool stuff, and she showed everyone how to do this in a video, and I tried it out, and it honestly works so well. So I just glued the metal together with super glue, and then the holes of the rolled soda can metal fit onto this hinge. And it takes a little wiggling, but after a while it pops on. And look at that, the gate swings. That's awesome. I'm really happy about this. Daisy Stalls' channel will be in the eye in the corner now if you want to go check her out. Decide to put the pole part of the hinge pieces onto a longer pole. This one was a little bit short and it wasn't really working out. And with the time skip, that's done. And with another time skip, all the metal parts are painted red, and I think the whole thing looks awesome. I'm so happy about this, and I think it looks just like the gates I have here. Anyways, of course, as with all of the fences and the other gates, I'm painting some lichen onto the gate, and when it's done, here is the final effect. I also paint some more lichen on the fences, as I think it gave a really nice look and it adds a lot of realism to the fence. Alright, so now for the part I had completely been dreading. As you can see, I've already started. I've already tried multiple times and failed sculpting the terrain. So I got these foam core blocks and kind of glued them together and glued them down just with some simple hot glue to my plywood base. And after a lot of struggling, I finally got this one little piece that's supposed to be a hillside that kind of slopes down. This is the bane of my existence. I honestly hated this and spent so many days on this. But anyways, I'm using this air dry clay from Crayola in the terracotta color. Got it for a school project and I never used this color because it kind of dries orange. So yeah, anyways, I'm using it now. And I thought I could just kind of slap the clay on there and make a hillside, but that didn't really work. So what I realized I need to do is cut this date packet lid and make a kind of sloping hillsidey thing, and I think that looks a lot better. Anyways, starting with the clay, I just kind of glop it and smear it down to cover the sharp plastic bit. Also sculpted this stitch that goes along the entirety of the plywood base, and I also used paper to build up the hillside when I ran out of date lids. Anyways, I'm going to let this clay cure and harden, and then I will be back. And another little cat assistant. And he's meowing in the background right now. When I came back, oh no, what the heck do I do? It's like all cracked and it looks so bad. And it's like coming off the base of the wood. I don't know what to do. So the clay was coming off of the wood and it was all cracked in pieces. I think it's because I used so much water when sculpting. But I came up with a quick and simple fix, Mod Podge, the saver of everything. And I just kind of smeared it onto the clay in all of the places where it was cracked. And it actually fixed it. It bound the clay together and also bound it back down to the plywood. And when it was done, it was nice and really satisfying and hard and smooth and just awesome. And here is some clay Mod Podge ASMR. Some of the clay did drip down the side of the board, and I need these two to join together, so never to fear, I just sliced it off with my craft knife. Even though the Mod Podge made it smooth, the join from clay to plywood wasn't smooth, so I still had to get out the sandpaper regardless and give it a good old sand. So the next order of operations is siding, and I bought this red corrugated cardboard for exactly that purpose. So what I'm going to be doing is taking it and putting it on the barn to make it like the sheet metal that's on a real barn. And I just really like this cardboard. It's the perfect color and size, and sure, the corrugations aren't exactly right, but you know, none of them are. So anyways, I did that and I put it all the way around, and I also put a white border of white corrugated cardboard on the inside of the barn, and this is the stuff I used. And I put a border at the top of the barn made of wood, and it just looks so finished, and I'm just so happy. I think it looks great in my opinion. And excuse the dolls over there, it looks like carnage. Anyways, I was so happy, but that's when disaster struck. I don't know what to do. The cat peed all over the barn. It's ruined. I don't know what to do. It's all through the bluestone, and it's everywhere. It's yellow.